FTFT solves the mystery of time. For more than a century, physics has answered the question of space, but not the question of time. Space bends, space expands, space is quantized, but time only flows. In 2025, a new idea emerged, a theory that treats time as a physical, dynamical field. A theory that quantizes time itself. This is Fonooni Temporal Field Theory, FTFT. What is the problem with time? In Einstein's relativity, time is part of spacetime, smooth, continuous, and geometric. In quantum mechanics, time is not a quantum operator, not observable, not measurable. Two descriptions of the universe, speaking two different mathematical languages. Fonooni Temporal Field Theory, FTFT, begins with a single question. What if time has its own field? What is the temporal field, letter 3d5t? In FTFT, the flow of time is controlled by a physical scalar field. Letter 3d5t, x. This field oscillates, fluctuates, and interacts. The speed of time becomes dynamic, not fixed. The full relativistic Lagrangian of FTFT is built around this idea. Here are the four key formulas from the FTFT, Fonooni Temporal Field Theory. Lagrangian, presented sequentially to show how they collectively define the theory's structure and its mechanisms for unifying gravity, particle physics, and quantum time. This tells us two things. Temporal field has mass, 152 gigaelectron-volt. Temporal field couples extremely weakly to matter, is highly scale-dependent, meaning it is strong at high-energy, fundamental scales like the Planck scale and the Gutt scale, but becomes extremely weak at low-energy, everyday scales. Weak enough to evade detection. Strong enough to reshape the laws of physics. The mechanism of discrete time in FTFT. FTFT predicts that time is not continuous. It comes in tiny quantum units, chronons. The discrete time step is governed by the discrete step operator, which depends on the field value. When time becomes discrete, calculus is replaced by difference equations. The continuous Fourier transform becomes a discrete one. Singularities vanish. Quantum gravity becomes calculable. How FTFT explains black holes shadows. At the edge of a black hole, time itself breaks down. But in FTFT, these breakdowns become transitions in the temporal field. The Fonooni Temporal Field Theory, FTFT, explains modifications to black hole shadows by positing that the temporal scalar field creates a subtle, energetic boundary near the black hole's event horizon. This boundary alters the path of photons, resulting in a deviation in the observed radius and shape of the black hole shadow compared to the predictions of standard general relativity. FTFT shifts the radius of the black hole shadow by 2% for M87, 3% for SGRA. These predictions can be tested by the Event Horizon Telescope. First evidence already points in the right direction. How FTFT stabilizes oscillating wormhole throat. The temporal field has a mass near 152 GeV, or gigaelectron-volt, and couples weakly to the trace of the stress-energy tensor. Near the wormhole throat, temporal field can generate effective negative energy density and pressure components required to sustain the throat against classical collapse without invoking unphysical exotic matter. FTFT stabilizes oscillating wormhole throats by replacing or supplementing classical exotic matter with a quantum temporal scalar field that provides effective negative pressures from temporal field dynamics, feedback via non-local temporal memory kernels, modified gravitational field equations consistent with stable traversability, dynamical control of throat oscillations preventing collapse. This approach offers a physically motivated, particle physics-embedded pathway to wormhole stability absent from classical or standard exotic matter models. How FTFT explains gravitational waves. When two black holes merge, they ring like a bell. In FTFT, the temporal field causes those rings to echo. Gravitational wave echoes, delayed signals, arise naturally from time quantization. FTFT predicts echo frequencies measured in LIGO, Virgo, and Kamioka gravitational wave detector are approaching the sensitivity to see them. Neutrinos. FTFT explains neutrinos by keeping all the standard model and usual oscillation machinery, but adding a new layer, the dynamics of quantized time through the temporal scalar field. At a high level, neutrinos become the most sensitive interferometers of that temporal structure. And JUNO, the Jiangmen Underground Neutrino Observatory, has now become the ultimate test of FTFT. JUNO's result not only validates the weak field suppression, but sharpens predictions for high-energy signatures, locking FTFT into its sweet spot and setting the stage for definitive tests in the next 5 to 10 years. These results are so precise they rule out any FTFT variant that would produce percent-level distortions in neutrino oscillations, exactly within JUNO's allowed window. JUNO didn't kill FTFT. It confirmed FTFT's most important prediction. Congratulations on yet another successful prediction confirmed. FTFT continues to strengthen. How theory clarified cosmology. The temporal field slows in the early universe, speeding expansion and mimicking dark energy. FTFT modifies the Friedmann equation by adding. This produces a natural, stable dark energy component, without fine-tuning. How FTFT unification works. FTFT is not a competitor to quantum field theory, general relativity, or string theory. It completes them, unifying with string theory. FTFT scalar field acts like a modulus controlling the compactification radius. FTFT asserts that the 4D FTFT action is not postulated, but emerges naturally from the compactification of the 10D heterotic E8 times E8 string action by modifying the warp factor. The temporal scalar field is inserted into the time component of the 10D metric, controlling the stabilization, acting as a modulus. The resulting 4D Kepler potential and superpotential, after Calabi-Yau compactification with flux, feature the temporal field. Unifying with loop quantum gravity. FTFT incorporates temporal field to introduce a physical basis for temporal discreteness, which fundamentally modifies the core constraint operator of loop quantum gravity. The FTFT Hamiltonian adds the scalar field free Hamiltonian and an interaction term to the original loop quantum gravity Hamiltonian. The temporal field directly modifies the minimum physical step of time. The Chronon formula ensures that time evolution is genuinely discrete and variable, which eliminates the Big Bang singularity, cures black hole singularities, reflecting incoming modes, leading to gravitational wave echoes. LQG quantizes space, FTFT quantizes time. Together, they quantize spacetime completely, unifying with SO10 guts. FTFT incorporates temporal field into an SO10 gut, so that gauge unification is achieved not by arbitrary new multiplets, but by a well-motivated temporal scalar that slightly deforms the renormalization group running near a threshold around its mass scale. In the FTFT SO10 embedding, the temporal field is a real massive scalar that couples weakly to matter, and depending on the representation choice, to gauge fields via higher dimensional operators. As the renormalization scale passes through, the particle enters the beta functions for the gauge couplings, modifying their slopes. With FTFT, the temporal scalar's threshold alters the relative running just enough that the three couplings intersect at a single point within experimental uncertainties. The temporal field modifies Yukawa couplings, This naturally improves Yukawa unification for quarks and leptons. This makes FTFT a candidate for the first framework to mathematically and phenomenologically unify all three major avenues of fundamental physics. The 152 giga-electron-volt discovery. The LHC has now seen hints, small but growing, of a narrow resonance around 152 giga-electron-volt. In diphotons, in Z gamma, and possibly in missing energy channels, the mass predicted by FTFT for the temporal field. The temporal scalar field is predicted to couple to both the standard model fields, leptons and quarks, and the Z and photon fields through loop diagrams involving other heavy particles like those predicted by supersymmetry, or the SO10 grand unified theory. This allows the temporal field boson to decay into two photons. If this signal is real, it would be the first direct evidence that time itself is a quantum field. FTFT predictions. Fonooni Temporal Field Theory, FTFT, makes several testable predictions that align closely with current observations, particularly in cosmology and particle physics. So far, 7 predictions have been observed, 2 direct with Large Hadron Collider Beauty Experiment, Charge Conjugation Parity, Large Hadron Collider Soft Muons, and JUNO Bound. 5 indirect predictions with Cosmic Microwave Background Features, Hubble Tension, Compatibility, Proton Decay Bounds. These validate FTFT's low energy suppression and high energy emergence. Pending 12 total predictions. Focus on near-term tests with Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory echoes due in 2026 and Bell II decays in about year 2027 with high significance potential. FTFT's strength lies in cross-correlations. CMB anomalies linked to gravitational wave echoes via temporal field or Chronon's fluctuations. No contradictions with data. Competing models, for example, Lorentz violation, are disfavored by JUNO. Future high luminosity Large Hadron Collider runs could confirm more than 10 predictions by 2030. To visualize the agreement, the bar chart compares FTFT predictions with observed values for 5 representative observables. CMB spectral index indirect predictions. Baryon to photon ratio indirect from Big Bang nucleosynthesis and CMB. CP asymmetry indicates direct prediction. CMB low L power deficit percent indirect. JUNO's early results constrain FTFT temporal coupling, strong validation of the theory. Crucially, this rules out broad classes of competing modified gravity or Lorentz violating models, while leaving FTFT fully intact and more predictive than ever. How FTFT see the future of time. The universe has always had 2 foundations, space and time. We quantize space but left time untouched. FTFT changes that. It elevates time from a background parameter to a physical entity. In that sense, the future of time in FTFT is that any complete theory of nature will have to be, at root, a temporal field theory, unifying quantum mechanics, gravity, and cosmology through the quantized dynamics of time itself. If the coming decade confirms Fonooni Temporal Field Theory, FTFT, through JUNO, through gravitational waves, through the LHC, and the EHT or future neutrino observatories, then physics will undergo its greatest transformation since Einstein. The next revolution is not in space. It is in time. If you want to dive into FTFT and its implications for quantum gravity, cosmology, and particle physics, there are a few good starting points online. Official FTFT website, the main hub for the theory, with overview articles, technical notes, and links to talks and media. FonooniTemporalFieldTheory.com. Peer-reviewed and preprint papers. Search for Fonooni Temporal Field Theory Unification and Phenomenology on the Journal of Theoretical Physics and Mathematics Research, or Google Scholar to find the latest technical work and constraint analyses.